The 86th floor. New York never truly sleeps, but after midnight it changes. The lights of Times Square flickered in the distance. Taxis crawled like glowing insects through Manhattan, and high above it all stood the towering silhouette of the Empire State Building. Maya wasn't supposed to be there that late. She worked as part of a small overnight maintenance crew. Most nights were routine, checking railings, clearing trash, locking observation decks. The 86th floor observatory was usually empty by 11 p.m. Tourists gone. Couples gone. Silence. But tonight felt different. The wind outside howled strangely against the metal railings. Not strong, just uneven. Like breath. Maya stepped out onto the observatory floor with her flashlight. The city glittered beneath her, endless and alive. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not echoing behind her. Walking ahead of her. Slow. Measured. She froze. Security, she called softly. No answer. She swung her flashlight toward the far end of the deck and saw someone standing near the railing. A woman. Still. Facing outward. Long dark hair moving slightly in the wind. But the wind wasn't strong enough to move hair like that. Ma'am, we're closed, Maya called out, walking slowly forward. The woman didn't move. Didn't react. Maya's chest tightened. Something about the posture wasn't right. Too stiff. Too perfectly upright. Then the woman spoke, but her voice didn't carry through the air. It sounded inside Maya's head. It's beautiful from here, isn't it? Maya stopped walking. Her flashlight flickered. The woman began to turn. But instead of turning normally, she turned too far. Her head twisting past where it should stop. And when her face came into view, there were no eyes. Just smooth skin. The flashlight died. And the footsteps started again. But this time, they were behind Maya. The hidden records. Maya didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that face, smooth, empty, unfinished. And the way it had turned toward her, bending farther than bone should allow. Security reviewed the footage the next morning. There was nothing there. No woman. No second figure. Just Maya, standing alone near the railing, backing away slowly as if frightened by empty air. Her supervisor suggested stress. Fatigue. Maybe vertigo from working at heights. But Maya knew what she saw. And more importantly, she knew what she heard. It's beautiful from here, isn't it? The voice hadn't echoed in the wind. It had echoed inside her head. That afternoon, instead of going home, Maya went to the building's lower archives, a small records room rarely visited except by historians or longtime staff. If something was happening on the 86th floor, it had to have happened before. The Empire State Building had stood since 1931. Millions of visitors. Thousands of employees. Nearly a century of stories. She began searching old incident reports. Most were routine, medical emergencies, minor accidents, weather-related closures. Then she found a thin file. Dated 1947. The paper was yellowed, brittle at the edges. It described an after-hours security report. A guard claimed he saw a woman standing at the railing after closing time. When approached, she did not respond. The guard reported feeling mentally disoriented and overwhelmed by sudden vertigo. He claimed the woman turned strangely before vanishing. The report ended abruptly. No follow-up. No explanation. Maya felt her pulse quicken. She dug deeper. Another file. 1963. A maintenance worker reported hearing footsteps on the observation deck after midnight. Surveillance at the time showed no visitors. He quit 3 days later. Then 1979. A tourist photograph taken at sunset, later developed, showed a blurred female figure standing alone near the railing. Witnesses said the spot had been empty. And every single report described the same detail. A woman, standing near the edge, watching the city below. Maya leaned back in her chair. A thought formed, slow and unsettling. The Empire State Building wasn't just famous for its height. It was famous for something darker. Over the decades, there had been tragic incidents involving visitors and the observation deck. The building had quietly implemented safety barriers, policies, and increased security over time. But what if somebody had never left? That night, Maya returned. She told no one. The elevator ride to the 86th floor felt longer than usual. The numbers climbed slowly. 60, 70, 80. The doors opened. The deck was empty. Wind brushed against the railings in uneven bursts. The city stretched endlessly below. Maya stepped outside. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely steady. "If you're here, I need to understand." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped. Not drastically, just enough that her breath became faintly visible. The lights flickered. And she heard it again. Footsteps. Not in front of her this time. All around her. Soft. Slow. Circling. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The fog rolled in suddenly, unnatural, thick, swallowing the skyline. The city disappeared. The world shrank to the observatory deck. And then she saw her, standing exactly where she had been the night before. Hair unmoving now. Head tilted slightly to one side. Waiting. Maya forced herself not to run. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman didn't speak. Instead, images flooded Maya's mind. Not memories. Not thoughts. Images. A crowded 1940s, New York street. A young woman in a pale dress. A letter clutched tightly in trembling hands. Tears mixing with rain. An elevator ride upward. A final walk toward the railing. And then, nothing. Silence. The faceless woman lifted one arm slowly and pointed outward toward the city. "They forgot me." The voice was clearer this time. Not angry. Not violent. Just empty. Maya felt something unexpected. Not fear. Sadness. "You're not forgotten," she whispered. The wind intensified. The woman's body flickered, like static. And then Maya noticed something new. There wasn't just one shadow forming in the fog behind her. There were several. Faint. Indistinct. Standing near the edges of the deck. Watching. Maya's breath caught. "How many of you are here?" The faceless woman did not answer. But the shadows grew darker. More defined. The fog pressed closer. And suddenly, the emergency lights cut out. Total darkness swallowed the observatory. In the pitch black, Maya heard something she hadn't heard before. Not footsteps. Not whispering. Crying. Soft. Distant. Coming from every direction. When the lights snapped back on, the deck was empty. The fog was gone. The city glittered normally below. Maya stood alone. But carved into the metal railing near where the woman had stood were faint scratch marks. Old. Layered. As if someone had gripped it desperately. For decades. As Maya stepped back toward the elevator, her phone vibrated in her pocket. A notification. A security alert. Someone had accessed the 86th floor 5 minutes ago. Access ID. Maya Torres. She froze. She had been standing there the entire time. Slowly, she opened the building security app. There was a second entry. Access ID. Unknown. Timestamp. 11:11 p.m. And beneath it, camera feed. Signal lost. Maya slowly turned back toward the railing. The wind had stopped. The night was perfectly still. But far below, in the reflection of the glass panel near the elevator doors, she saw a figure standing behind her. Not the woman this time. Taller. Broader. Watching silently. And when she turned around, there was nothing there. But the elevator doors were already closing. And they hadn't been open when she stepped away. The locked stairwell. Maya didn't wait for the elevator to reach the lobby. She pressed the emergency stop at the 80th floor. Her reflection in the mirrored wall looked pale, almost translucent beneath the fluorescent lighting. For a brief second, she imagined she could see something standing behind her again, tall, indistinct. But when she turned, the elevator was empty. The doors slid open. Instead of heading home, she stepped into the service corridor, a narrow hallway used mostly by maintenance crews and security. She had one thought repeating in her mind. If something is here, it didn't come from above. The observatory was too exposed, too public, too monitored. If there were shadows living in the building, they were below. There was a stairwell few people used anymore, one that led from the 86th floor down through mechanical levels and storage areas rarely accessed. Most employees preferred elevators. Faster, cleaner, safer. Maya pushed open the heavy metal door. The stairwell lights flickered weakly. Concrete walls. Cold air. The smell of dust and old metal. She began descending. Each step echoed sharply. After 2 flights, she heard it. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Low. Slow. Not hers. She froze. The sound stopped. She swallowed and kept walking. By the time she reached the 78th floor, the temperature had dropped again, that unnatural chill she now recognized. Her phone lost signal. The lights dimmed. And then she saw something that made her stop completely. The stairwell door to the 77th floor was chained shut. Not with modern locks. With old, rusted chain and a heavy padlock that looked decades old. A small metal sign hung beside it. Authorized access only, closed 1947. Her chest tightened. The same year as the first incident report. She stepped closer. The chain wasn't dusty. It looked recently disturbed. There were faint scratches along the door's surface, long, uneven marks dragged downward, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Suddenly, a loud metallic bang echoed from below. Maya jumped. The sound repeated. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone striking metal against concrete. Coming from beneath the chain door. Her breath came faster now. This is insane, she whispered to herself. But she didn't leave. Instead, she knelt beside the door and shined her flashlight through the small wired glass window. At first, she saw nothing but darkness. Then, movement. A figure standing at the far end of the hallway inside. Not the faceless woman. This one was taller. Its outline blurred at the edges, like smoke rising upward. It didn't walk. It glided forward slowly. The glass began to fog from the inside. Maya backed away instinctively. The metal chain rattled violently. The padlock strained. And then, silence. The chain hung still. Her flashlight flickered out again. In the darkness, she heard something new. Whispers. Not one voice. Many. Overlapping. Desperate. Don't leave. It's cold. We're still here. Please. Maya stumbled backward up the stairs, heart pounding. But as she reached the landing, the door above her slammed shut. She was trapped between floors. The air felt heavy, pressurized. And then she realized something horrifying. The whispers weren't coming from below anymore. They were coming from behind her. Slowly, she turned. Standing on the steps just 1 flight above her were 3 shadow figures. Unmoving. Their shapes stretched unnaturally along the walls, merging into the darkness. And behind them, the faceless woman. But this time her head wasn't tilted. It was upright. Watching. Maya's voice shook. What do you want? The woman stepped forward. Her feet never touched the stairs. When she spoke, her voice echoed not in Maya's ears, but inside her chest. You stand where we stood. Images slammed into Maya's mind again. A crowd gathering in 1947. A tragic fall. Newspaper headlines. Whispers of blame. Silenced reports. Doors sealed. And something else. Not an accident. A struggle. The memory sharpened. The woman hadn't been alone that night decades ago. Someone had followed her up. Someone who should not have been there. Maya gasped. You weren't the only one. The shadows behind the woman pulsed darker. The tall figure she had seen in the elevator reflection emerged from the darkness at the top of the stairwell. Broader. Heavier. Its presence felt different. Colder. Predatory. Unlike the others. The air grew crushingly heavy. The faceless woman turned toward the taller shadow, not with fear, but with anger. The whispers grew louder. And for the first time, Maya understood. The spirits tied to the observatory weren't just lingering. They were trapped. And something was keeping them there. The tall shadow began descending the steps toward her. Each movement caused the stairwell lights to burst one by one, plunging sections into darkness. Pop, pop, pop. Maya backed toward the chained 77th floor door. The padlock began rattling again. Not from inside. From the tall shadow's direction. The entity reached the middle landing. The shadows behind it stretched like long claws across the walls. Maya felt her lungs tighten, as if invisible hands were squeezing her ribs. The faceless woman suddenly lunged forward. Not at Maya. At the tall shadow. The stairwell erupted in violent wind. The chain snapped. The 77th floor door flew open. Darkness spilled out like smoke. The tall shadow recoiled, distorting violently. The whispers turned into a roar. And Maya was thrown backward into the sealed hallway. She hit the ground hard. The stairwell door slammed shut again. Silence. Total silence. The hallway around her was dim, coated in decades of dust. Old storage crates lined the walls. And, at the far end, an office door stood slightly open. Inside, a single desk, a rotary phone, and a newspaper dated October 1947 sitting neatly on top. Maya slowly stood. On the front page was a headline about a tragic fall from the observatory. But the article had been edited. A section cut out, carefully removed, and written faintly in pencil along the margin were 3 words. He pushed her. Maya's breath caught. The tall shadow. It wasn't another victim. It was something else. Something that had never left. Something that didn't belong with the others. And now, the door behind her began to creak open again. From the stairwell. Slowly. Deliberately. The lights in the sealed hallway flickered on by themselves. And footsteps echoed toward her. Heavy. Measured. Getting closer. The one who never fell. The footsteps were slow. Deliberate. Heavy enough that the dust on the sealed 77th floor trembled with each step. Maya stood frozen inside the abandoned hallway, the old newspaper shaking in her hands. The words he pushed her seemed darker now, as if the ink were fresh instead of decades old. The stairwell door creaked wider. A shadow stretched across the floor first, long, distorted, bending unnaturally around the corners of the walls. Then he stepped through. The tall figure. Unlike the others, he had shape, structure. The faint outline of a man in an old-fashioned overcoat. Broad shoulders. Hat brim low over his face. But where his features should have been, there was only darkness. Thick and shifting, like storm clouds contained inside skin. The air in the hallway dropped sharply in temperature. Maya's breath fogged. "You're not one of them," she whispered. The entity stopped walking. For a moment, everything felt suspended. The dust in the air, the distant hum of the building, even her own heartbeat. Then the darkness beneath the hat shifted, and a voice emerged. Not inside her mind. Out loud. Rough. Cold. They should have stayed silent. The lights flickered violently. Maya's mind raced. The woman from 1947. The struggle. The erased report. The sealed floor. "You killed her," Maya said. The shadow moved closer. The walls seemed to narrow as it approached, swallowing light with each step. She was going to ruin everything. Images burst into Maya's mind again, but clearer now. A young woman confronting a man near the railing. An argument. Papers in her hand. Evidence. A shove. A scream swallowed by wind. The crowd below never saw the push. They saw only the fall. And he walked away. Untouched. Unpunished. The building sealed the floor quietly months later, blaming structural concerns. Records edited. Witnesses dismissed. But he had never left. The guilt had not chained him. The building had. He had tied himself to the place with the weight of what he'd done. And the others, those who came after, were trapped in a shadow. "You're keeping them here," Maya realized. The darkness around him pulsed. "They belong to this place." "No," she said firmly, though her voice shook. "You do." The whispering began again, but stronger now. Not desperate. Angry. The faceless woman appeared at the end of the hallway. Not gliding this time. walking. Her steps echoed softly. Behind her, faint silhouettes gathered, the shadows of others who had lingered at the edge of the observatory across decades. The temperature plunged. The tall shadow turned toward them. For the first time, it stepped back. The hallway lights burst one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness swallowed half the corridor. The woman stopped a few feet from Maya. Up close, her face wasn't completely smooth anymore. Faint outlines had begun to form. Eyes closed. As if remembering how, the tall shadow roared, a deep, distorted sound that shook the walls. The floor trembled. Cracks splintered across the ceiling. The building groaned. Above them, alarms suddenly began blaring faintly from higher floors. The Empire State Building was reacting. Maya stumbled back as wind tore through the sealed hallway like a storm forced through a tunnel. The newspaper flew from her hands. The tall shadow lunged forward. But the other spirits surged at the same moment. The hallway exploded into swirling darkness and pale light. Maya shielded her face as the temperature swung violently from freezing to burning and back again. Through the chaos, she saw something she would never forget. The faceless woman stepping directly in front of the tall shadow, reaching out, touching his chest. And where her hand met him, the darkness cracked. Like glass. The tall figure staggered. The hallway filled with deafening whispers. Not fear. Not sorrow. Truth. Voices overlapping, recounting moments, reliving memories, refusing silence. The cracks spread across his form. He screamed, not angrily now, but desperately. No one will remember you. The woman's eyes opened. Clear, bright, and calm. They already do. The words echoed with power. The tall shadow shattered. Not into pieces. Into smoke. Darkness tearing apart and being pulled upward, sucked through the ceiling like vapor through a vent. The pressure vanished instantly. The wind stopped. The lights stabilized. Silence fell over the sealed floor. The spirits in the hallway stood still for a moment. Then, one by one, they began to fade. Not violently. Not abruptly. Gently. Like mist lifting in morning sunlight. The faceless woman was the last to remain. Her features were clearer now. Soft. Human. She looked at Maya. Not with emptiness. With gratitude. Then she turned toward the stairwell. And dissolved into light. The hallway grew warmer. Normal. For the first time since 1947, it felt empty. Hours later, emergency crews would respond to minor structural alarms triggered by pressure fluctuations within the building. No damage was found. The sealed 77th floor officially reopened for inspection the next week. No chains. No locked doors. Just storage. Nothing unusual. But something had changed. Maya returned to the 86th floor one last time before sunrise. The city stretched below her, glowing gold in early light. The wind was steady. Natural. No uneven breaths. No footsteps. She walked to the railing where the woman had once stood. The scratch marks were gone. The metal smooth. For the first time, standing there didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. As the sun broke over Manhattan, Maya felt something she hadn't expected. Relief. The Empire State Building still towered over the city. Still historic. Still magnificent. But the weight it carried for nearly a century was finally gone. Or so she thought. Because, as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. A notification from building security. Access log. 86th floor. Time. 5:11 a.m. Entry ID, unknown. Maya slowly turned back toward the empty observatory. The wind brushed past her ear. Soft. Almost like a whisper. It's beautiful from here, isn't it? The deck was empty. But somewhere far below, a single elevator began rising on its own.